Live right now, Pete Sepp with the National Taxpayers Union. Since our cameras are on and we're rolling, why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of an introduction for yourself, and then we can get to the matter at hand, which I believe is your concern, rightly so, about the tax rates, what's going on with the fiscal situation, a conversation we haven't had in America in quite a few years. And I'm sure it's nice to dust off some of those talking points and get back at it. When I was in the House of Delegates, I chaired the cost-cutting caucus, and we tried to create a better, more streamlined government here in Virginia. Very successful, but can't do it all. So Pete Sepp, introduce yourself and tell us what's going on at National Taxpayers Union.
Well, first, on to a very happy topic before the weightier ones. Happy belated birthday, I am told.
Thank you. Thank you. It was, the older you get, the more meaningful they are, and so when you get into the mid 50s and then some, which yesterday was for me, and then some, it was a great day. Kids came in this weekend. We had a lot of fun. The Steelers won, so I'm thrilled. It was a great way to kick off the Monday morning, late 12:05 game-winning overtime field goal. But thanks, Peter. Really appreciate that.
Well, of course, and believe me, I know the feeling of and then some. So, to the heavier topic, unfortunately, I'm Pete Sepp, president of National Taxpayers Union. I've worked at NTU in various capacities for 33 years. Our organization has been working for 52 years total. Wow. And I have to say, we are at a very critical point in the development of fiscal and taxpayer rights policy in America today, because we're not just talking about a $3, $4, $5, $6 trillion spending and taxing package working its way through Congress. And all of those numbers have been bandied about in the last couple of months. We're also talking about a dramatic expansion of power that could be given to the Internal Revenue Service. Not only a 50% budget increase, but also vast new powers to, for example, look into every American's bank account who has $600 a year of inflow and outflow from that account. That is a serious imposition on Americans in the middle class. It is going to lead to all kinds of mischief on the part of the tax agency. Those are the kinds of things that don't necessarily make the headlines, even as these top line numbers in the trillions of dollars do seem to be making the headlines.
Well, let's dive into that a little bit. Pete, you bring up an interesting point as you close there, because there's so much going on in the world. There's so much information and disinformation and misinformation. It's hard to get the right information out. And I'm sure that's what your organization does, the National Taxpayers Union, tries to inform people what's going on. Tell us how to get to your website and what people can do from there. And then we'll come back to the issues.
One of the best resources they can access on our website at ntu.org is a special page we've set up with information and a take action section where people can contact their lawmakers. And this is especially important for those who may be represented by Democrats at the federal level. There are a number of Democrats in the House of Representatives and Senate who are wondering whether the $3.5 trillion advertised price tag for this so-called reconciliation bill is too high. They might negotiate it down to $2 trillion. That's still a problem. But the point is, there are persuadable Democrats in Virginia, for example, with Abby Spanberger. You have folks even in California and Oregon, Jeff Schrader and Scott Peters, who are persuadable to vote against this package if given the right circumstances. So if they go to our website, ntu.org/no Biden taxes, they can get a lot of resources on what's really going on. And I think one of the most important points here is that the middle class in America is endangered by this tax package. Despite all the rhetoric we hear, nobody making less than $400,000 has anything to worry about with this package. Not true. There are new taxes, for example, on energy in this bill, a so-called methane fee on natural gas producers. What's going to happen if you levy that fee on production? It's going to get passed along to consumers who are especially worried right now about the cost of home heating going up. Natural gas prices are soaring right now, and this won't make it any more affordable if it's enacted. You also have the business taxes, and people will say, well, that's just raising the corporate tax rate from 21% where it is now to 26.5% under one plan. Well, Congress's own nonpartisan scorekeeping agency, this is not conservative Republicans saying this, this is the Joint Committee on Taxation. They say that about $100 billion of that one corporate tax increase will land squarely on the shoulders of households making less than $100,000 a year. That's because it's going to be lower wages for workers, lower returns for shareholders, again, higher prices for consumers because the businesses pass it along at a time when inflation fears are really, really coming to the forefront.
But it's not that they fear inflation, is that they're dealing with it. I mean, every day it seems like when we go to the grocery store, it's like just another product goes up or it's not on the shelves. Clearly, this is not what Biden ran on. I hope this is not what he meant by restoring the soul of the nation, more taxes and more spending. But I think there's one in there I've heard about is the federal excise tax on tobacco. Is that also in the package?
Yes, tobacco taxes would go up and vaping taxes too, a whole new level of taxation.
See, and this is what, especially on the tobacco taxes, lifelong non-cigarette smoker. This is not my gig. Never has been. Just wasn't for any number of reasons. But those who smoke today are disproportionately poor and disproportionately minority. So they're literally raising taxes on the people they say they're not going to raise taxes on.
Yes.
And I don't think that's being communicated, because if you raise taxes on tobacco, who's smoking tobacco?
That's right.
And that's not your typical suburban voter, right? It's just, I think their message is so off base right now, and they misread the result of the election. And this is such an overreach by the congressional Democrats and the Biden administration. I'm reading the book Peril by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa. And then he talks about how they came to this decision after the elections in Georgia, like, oh, we can get all these great things done. Like, that's not what you ran on.
That's right.
What are you seeing, Pete Sepp, with National Taxpayers Union, www.ntu.org? What are you seeing on the ground out there in all of your states that you're working?
We're seeing a great deal of concern among voters that this agenda has swung far, far too much leftward. And there's polling data, of course, indicating that many Americans love the idea of free college, more daycare, universal pre-kindergarten. Those are all great ideas in concept, but when you propose to them the taxes that are going to pay for part of this, the borrowing that might have to make up part of the package too, they start to get worried, and deservedly so. And in fact, we've done some polling in several key districts around the country that are currently held by Democrats in Pennsylvania and Kansas, other areas of the country. And we're seeing by 65% margins, Americans disapproving of the $3.5 trillion package, as well as many of the taxes to pay for it. And again, what's coming through, and this is by 80% margins in some cases, fears over rising inflation and the fact that this package will contribute to the problem. Washington just doesn't get that.
Well, here's the thing. This is, having been an elected official in the House of Delegates here in Virginia, if you do what you say you're going to do, you build trust. And when you don't, you erode trust. And the whole notion of doing this massive package after they've already done a first round in the beginning of the Biden administration, you're not even going to try to pay what we went through. You're going to keep putting on the credit card. But if you're not doing what you say you're going to do, and you're going to pile up more taxes and spending, and then have the audacity to come out and say it doesn't cost anyone anything, except for the rich, like the rich aren't going to have behavioral changes, and it's not going to impact people making decisions so say it's just on the rich. They're still going to have a negative impact in the economy. That $3.5 trillion has to come from somewhere. It's not like we're at the printing press, the Fed. They're just not going to keep printing this stuff. Someone has to pay the bill. If they would just come out and say, yeah, as a matter of fact, your taxes are going to go up. If we're going to want all these things, you're going to have to pay the freight. My wife and I just flew a low-cost carrier to get a nonstop flight to go see the Rolling Stones in Nashville 2 weekends ago. And I said, I've never flown this airline before. I'll see what they have to offer. Prices look great. Then you start going, oh, if you want to sit, not in the engine, you're right, in the luggage compartment. Oh, that's going to cost you. Oh, fine. If you want to board early, here's what's going to cost you. Okay, fine. If you want to carry on bags, okay, that's fine. And by the time you get to the total tab, you're like, this is what I paid for. And it was an awful experience. And that's the only analogy I can come up with recently that says you just can't sell a bad bill of goods. Just be honest with the American public. We're so lacking in that in today's governing and throughout our society, and therefore people don't trust it.
Yeah, exactly. And even Bernie Sanders, I have to give him credit sometimes. I think his handlers try to keep him on message and not admitting it as much, but he has in the past said, look, this could very well mean major tax increases for the middle class if we want totally free, air quotes, healthcare and education and the like. And he's right. If you look abroad at the type of agenda that's being proposed here and its parallels to other countries, there's one truth here, and that is a middle class welfare state requires middle class taxes.
And this is why Bernie Sanders is so attractive to a certain set of voters. And one of the reasons I respect the man. He is what he says he is. He is a socialist. Now, He runs for president, he runs as a Democrat, but he is ultimately a socialist, and he's willing to get out there and say, yeah, that's what we're doing. Therefore, I respect the man. I don't agree with him. Right. I think his policies are wrong. I think but I think his politics are trustworthy. He's not going to lie to you about his bad policies and his bad ideas. And I respect him. What I can't respect is someone who gets there and says, no, that's not what we're doing.
Right.
Knowing full well, that's exactly what they're doing.
Right.
It's staggering.
That's the disingenuousness that's going on here. And
right.
I mean, I see this in the proposal to allow the IRS to look into everyone's bank accounts and track all of their transactions.
Right.
The initial revenue collection estimate is, well, if we let them do it for every account with cash flow annually of $600 or more, we might very well collect an additional $400 to $500 billion over a decade. And then if you say, well, why don't we limit the reach a little bit? Let's say $10,000 of churn every year. You say this is only going to affect the wealthy who are tax cheats. So why would you care? Then the comeback answer, and we saw this when the Ways and Means Committee was meeting, well, no, we can't have that kind of limit because that's going to cut the expected revenue collection by more than 2/3. Well, right. Self-evidently, that means they want to go after the middle class for higher tax collections. And believe me, after doing this job as long as I have, there are many, many Americans who are just going to be intimidated into paying whatever the IRS says they owe, even if they don't actually owe it.
This is the wrong way to go about collecting more revenue. And Americans are going to have to get used to the fact that someone's going to pay down this debt. Now, it can be your grandchildren or your children or you.
Yes.
Just deal with the simple fact that we're approaching $30 trillion in debt. Someone's got to pay the tab. When the interest rates go up, and they will, inflation is soaring right now. They just readjusted Social Security at 6%.
Yes.
We have got to come up with a more efficient, effective, unintrusive way of getting revenue in. Because I've advocated for a better revenue collection agency in the IRS, but not the way they're going about it. If you streamline your taxes, if you make them, less, there's probably a word y'all use in the policy language that makes it easier to collect it, because when you go to a restaurant, meals tax, sales tax, you don't think about it. When you file your income taxes, man, you think about it, right?
Yes.
You check out the grocery store. Glenn Youngkin's trying to cut the grocery tax here. it's a smart political idea. It's going to really help people at the grocery stores, but that's an easy revenue stream because no one gets in the way of it. It's
That's
fair.
right.
No one complains about those taxes. Why? Because they're fair. Everyone
That's
pays
right.
the same rate, right?
That's right.
We just got to get to that thinking again in this country. Flat taxing. We're the Steve Forbes and God bless his soul, Jack Kemp. I mean, those guys had it right.
Well, they did. And I think whether we choose to move to a consumption-based system at the federal level or a flat tax, and we still have to file returns, there is this age-old equation. And I think you ran into this during your own public service, that helping people understand their tax obligations and making it easier for them to do it is the best compliance strategy you can possibly enact. Not leaning on them with more audits and threats.
Just be honest.
It's cheaper.
It's cheaper. And look, when they go to that wealth tax, and I know you got to go, and I appreciate your time. Love to have you back on. When they go to the wealth tax, and you keep hearing Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren talk about wealth tax. What they're talking about is your personal property, your house.
Yes.
That's exactly what it's going to come down to eventually. And so they're going to put their nose under the tent for this so-called wealth tax. It's anything that increases in value without a transaction occurring. So all those home values that went up during the pandemic, imagine getting stuck with a tax bill because your home value went up 20% in the pandemic.
Yeah.
I mean, it's absolutely
all the contents of your house too. Right. If you have artwork hanging on the walls, the federal government will assess it every year.
Every year. Can you imagine the outcry in America? Because they're just one of the things that's hurting our country is the lack of truth.
Yes.
And the lack of trust. And it's eroding our culture, it's eroding our people, it's eroding our civilization. And I want to thank Pete Sepp of the National Taxpayers Union for coming on today and sharing with us what his organization does. What kind of an organization you all set up as? Is it a C3, C6? What are you doing?
We're a C4 organization, meaning we lobby Congress day in and day out. And I sure do mean that these days. We have been busy 24/7.
Good. Well, it's time America deal with its bills, and it's time for organizations like yourself to get the attention that they are due, because you fight the fight in the trenches, whether it's being discussed in the news and around the country at all. And so Pete Sepp, and to all your folks, and I remember John Berthoud, is that his name?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Great guy. I
worked with president.
Yeah, I worked with him in the early aughts when I was in the House, and it's a great organization. And thanks for keeping as we used to say in Virginia, keep the big boys honest. That was old Henry Howell's admonition from the early 70s, his campaign. Keep the big boys honest. And, you're fighting a good fight, and we can't thank you enough for being in the arena.
Well, it was truly a pleasure, and I hope we can chat again soon.
Love to. Anytime, Pete. Best of luck to you. And update us what's going on in that package, because, as a tobacco growing state and a tobacco manufacturing state, that federal excise tax is really important here in Virginia.
Yeah, it sure is.
And it's disingenuous to say it's not going to raise taxes on poor people, because that's exactly what it does.
It will. Whether you smoke or vape, you're going to pay more.
Yeah. Thanks, Pete. Really appreciate your time today.
My pleasure. Take care.